Kevin Sullivan has joined us here at the desk, and I am very frankly more than somewhat concerned over the fact that the purple haze has returned.
Concerned is not the word for you, Mr. Soley. Concerned is the word for Dusty Roads. Dusty Roads. I traveled to Bangkok. I went to the Lady in Black, and I found the guardian of the golden spike, the purple haze himself. She walked me down to the den, and I found him resting his head on the pillow and having sweet dreams of Dusty Roads. Because the last time the haze came for me, sent by the chairman of the board himself, Rhodes's face was a mass of ashes. He has been directed. The purple haze. Everyone in the wrestling world has wondered where he has been. He has been on the top of Diamond Head for 47 days, purging himself to come back to Florida. And woe is the word for you, Rhodes, because you are going to be strapped to the tree of woe for the last time. And this time, tortured. And it doesn't matter if Mulligan or Wyndham or any of your family tried to get together. This time is the final chapter. Because the haze has spent plenty of time on the head, in the den, on the pillow. It is now time for the guardian of the golden spike to come, and you will see it one more time.
Recently, we started a new series here on Pro Wrestling Proverbs about women in wrestling. And a kind of small connecting piece between the two was Kevin Sullivan, because he was associated with both Woman and Luna Vachon. He was brought up both times. We didn't really think anything of it. And unfortunately, this man, Kevin Sullivan, has passed away August 9th of 2024. Many people know him, unfortunately. It's kind of become... Would you say it's a meme? Do people actually believe the conspiracy theory?
I think a lot of people believe it. And what's sad is I have some anecdote for you. The first time I ever heard the name Kevin Sullivan was after Benoit died, and being on like early YouTube, like that 2008-9 time period. Watching videos of like Chris Benoit conspiracy theories, and it was always, this guy Kevin Sullivan, and then you go on a deep dive, and I'm like, oh yeah, Chris Benoit took his girl and he broke in and murked him. That makes sense. But like 99.99% of conspiracy theories, it's all conjecture with no evidence or facts. Just people just straight up lying or misinterpreting statements by other people. So we'll get that clear out of the way right now. Kevin Sullivan did not kill Chris Benoit. I will argue with anybody. If anybody wants to debate me on that, fucking hit me up. I would love to have you on, and we can go round for round on that.
It's one of those things, I'll kind of get to it as I talk about him, where besides the former relationship to a woman, Nancy Benoit, his gimmick also played a role in people thinking he had a hand in it. And it's because he played the gimmick so well, even at instances that you wouldn't think he would. But before getting there, he did debut in the early 1970s as Johnny West. And I was telling you just before this that to me that's crazy, because when I first heard the name Kevin Sullivan, it goes back to those VHS tapes I had of WCW from like 89 to 99. And the last time he appears is that 1997 Bash at the Beach. So the fact that he was going strong and seemingly full time the whole time for 27 years and beginning in an era of drugs and hazing, and I think that itself speaks volumes about the man. He didn't debut under the Kevin Sullivan name. He was Johnny West. And he traveled the circuits, as you will, throughout Florida, the Gulf Coast area. He even showed up in the WWWF. Went to San Francisco, went to Georgia. And the very first time he became a heel, which he would be for the majority of his career, was in late 1980. Jeez. He attacked Steve Kern as they were going to battle for the NWA National Television Championship. And from there, he'd be a heel in the Memphis territory, where he feuded with the Honky Tonk Man. And he battled, of course, you're in Memphis, you're going to battle Jerry Lawler. He did return to Georgia, stayed a heel, and went back to Florida. And it was in Florida around 82 that the Prince of Darkness gimmick began, where he was, he's the cult leader. He would bring the evil out of people, and at the time it was inspired by the Satanic Panic that was going on. But this gimmick lasted with him throughout his whole career, even as far as Ring of Honor in the 2010s. His biggest group that he was associated with, of course, was, because the Satanic Panic, his Army of Darkness, which had Mark Lewin, a famous wrestler that wrestled a lot in Michigan, and Luna Vachon, as well as Woman. In Florida, he feuded with Barry Windham, former partner Mike Graham, and, of course, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. He brought the Prince of Darkness gimmick to International Championship Wrestling, which was in Boston, Massachusetts, his hometown. And he brought Mark Lewin with him. That's, I think, the same thing. That commercial, it's going to forever haunt me. And then, while in ICW, he had feuds with Billy Graham and Bruiser Brody.
I will also say,
so he's
no disrespect to Kevin Sullivan's hometown here, or I guess he was technically born in Cambridge, but Boston, top 5 worst U.S. cities. I'll say it. Anyway,
I can believe it, but you figure up to this point, before he's even truly quote unquote hit the big time, he's already had major feuds with Jerry Lawler, Dusty Rhodes, Barry Windham, Billy Graham, and Bruiser Brody. Not a bad resume. He showed up in Jim Crockett Promotions around 1987, and while still having the Prince of Darkness-esque gimmick, he formed the Varsity Club. This was a team with himself, Mike Rotunda, of course, Bray Wyatt's father, the future IRS, and Rick Steiner. And it's because they were all amateur wrestling champions. It's always so weird, because I watched the NWO era before the older era on the VHS tapes. So I saw him as the Taskmaster. And to see him in this Varsity Club, it's kind of a whiplash. They started feuding with Jimmy Garvin. And as they're feuding with Jimmy Garvin, Rick Steiner left the group, but was replaced with Dr. Death Steve Williams and Dan Spivey, the future Waylon Mercy. So it's almost like a little concoction for Bray Wyatt here, huh? A Prince of Darkness, his dad, and Waylon Mercy, who of course was the inspiration for Bray Wyatt. This group was kind of the B heel stable. Of course, under the Horsemen. But they still feuded with Dusty, the Road Warriors, Rick Steiner. In late '89, the Varsity Club was done. But he formed another stable, Sullivan Slaughterhouse. This had Cactus Jack and Buzz Sawyer, who was later replaced by Bam Bam Bigelow. And then they would feud with Mike Rotunda. He took a little time off in 90 and returned as the manager of the one-man gang, Black Blood, who was Billy Jack Haynes, the Angel of Death, and he was also the masked Great Wizard, who managed none other than Kevin Nash's greatest gimmick, Oz.
That's quite the hot take you got there.
Might be a little tongue-in-cheek, but after he left WCW in 91, he worked in Japan, and he wrestled Onita and the Sheik in FMW. He ended up going to Smoky Mountain Wrestling for a couple of years, which I'd love to see the writer's room there with him and Jim Cornette. I'm sure that they had some great back and forth. He ended up, while in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, showing up in ECW along with Woman. He debuted teaming with Abdullah the Butcher to face Stan Hansen and Terry Funk in a bunkhouse brawl. I am sure not a single wrestling move was used in that match. He formed a tag team with the Tasmaniac, and they defeated Shane Douglas and Tommy Dreamer to win the ECW Tag Team Championship. That's right, Kevin Sullivan is a ECW Tag Team Champion. They would end up losing the titles to the Public Enemy, and they had a match against Pat Tanaka and the Original Sheik. Another interesting match was himself, the Tasmaniac, Road Warrior Hawk, and Terry Funk facing Mr. Hughes, the Public Enemy, and Shane Douglas. On paper, one team clearly better than the other. His final match for ECW, he lost to Jimmy Snuka, and this is when Woman ended up joining forces with the Sandman. He did make a special appearance for ECW as part of the settlement for copyright infringement claim filed against WCW by ECW. He ended up showing back up in WCW starting in 94, where he teamed with his kayfabe brother, Dave Sullivan. Fun fact for those that don't know Dave Sullivan, he would call himself Evad because he was a dyslexic character. That's right, WCW did Eugene before Eugene. They were feuding with the Nasty Boys, and Kevin Sullivan actually enlisted Cactus Jack's help to beat the Nasty Boys for the tag titles. Evad left, but then he ended up coming back, and he was dressed like his idol, Hulk Hogan. This pissed Kevin off, and Kevin Sullivan and Hulk Hogan started feuding. Kevin Sullivan brought in Brutus Beefcake, who was known as the Butcher. Thanks, Kevin. He also brought in Avalanche, who used to be Earthquake, and they were the three faces of fear. So these three guys feuded with Hogan, Randy Savage, and Sting. This time, Kevin Sullivan is on the opposite side of the mismatch. Avalanche ended up leaving its group, and Kevin Sullivan turned on the Butcher. Now we're on to the Dungeon of Doom, one of my favorite guilty pleasures in wrestling. Kevin Sullivan started hearing the voice of someone calling to come find him. He ended up finding the Master, who is none other than King Curtis Iaukea. This is when he was given the new gimmick of the Taskmaster, and they immediately started putting together a new group, the Dungeon of Doom. They got Kamala, the Barbarian, Ming, the Yeti, Hugh Morris, Loch Ness, who was a British wrestler better known as Giant Haystacks, a one-man gang, Big Bubba Rogers, who is the Big Boss Man, and the debuting Giant, who at the time was described as Andre the Giant's son. And I know what you're thinking, they're all monsters except for Hugh Morris. Well, Hugh Morris's real name is Bill DeMott, so that's all you should need to know. He brought in his former Three Faces of Fear mates, Avalanche, who is now the Shark, and the Butcher, who had the amazing gimmick of the Zodiac, which Bruce Beefcake painted his face and said yes, no over and over. That was his gimmick. Fun fact about the Shark at this time, he used to have a LSU Tiger tattoo on his arm, and he thought the Shark was going to be such a good gimmick that he tattooed over it.
Oh my god.
He ended up not using the Shark name for very long. Vader was also a member of the Dungeon of Doom, but that was only for a short time. They lost to the Hulkamaniacs in a War Games match, and it turned out that the Zodiac, Bruce Beefcake, was a spy for Hulk Hogan. Ooh, that dirty guy.
Ooh.
They did add Jimmy Hart as a manager, and the Giant ended up winning the WCW World Title. So I mean, they got one championship. It was during his time feuding with Hulk Hogan that I'm sure you've seen clips of it where Hulk Hogan gets his mustache shaved on TV, so that way he can be ready for a movie. Kevin Sullivan did that. I'm sure you've seen the clip of Hulk Hogan wearing all black and having the sword, trying to, embrace the hate like John Cena do years later. That was during this feud. The Dungeon of Doom also teamed with the Horsemen as the alliance to end Hulkamania. I don't think they were the Horsemen yet. I think it was just Flair and Anderson. But either way, it was the alliance to end Hulkamania. Clearly it didn't work. The Dungeon then feuded with the Four Horsemen after Kevin Sullivan started just hating Brian Pillman. And once Pillman left... I'm flipping things. That's my mistake. After Pillman left, that's when they would join forces to get rid of Hulkamania. But, as things tend to happen, there was some infighting, as Sullivan and Benoit began to feud. During this time, this is when Kevin Sullivan booked his own divorce, as they say. The Dungeon added Conan to the group, which is one of those question marks. And Sullivan also brought in Jacqueline to help feud with Benoit and Woman, and he would end up losing his retirement match to Chris Benoit at Bash at the Beach 1997. A great match. It's one of those feuds and one of those matches where you can tell they're hitting each other. They don't like each other. As much as Kevin Sullivan wants to say they were working, no, those were shoots. This allowed Sullivan to kind of go back. He was a booker at this point. That's why Brian Pillman, told him, "I respect you, Booker man." He did come back once as the Varsity Club was reformed. Mike Rotunda and Rick Steiner and Kevin Sullivan himself. They were supposed to help hacksaw Jim Duggan. They turned on Jim Duggan. Don't know why Jim Duggan was in a major storyline in WCW in '99. Kevin Sullivan became the head booker in 2000. And this is what caused the Radicals to jump to WWE because they didn't like Kevin Sullivan. This is where he gave Benoit the heavyweight title, and Benoit still left. Rumor is Shane Douglas wanted to leave with him, but Vince McMahon was not interested in Shane Douglas after the whole Dean Douglas debacle. After this, he kind of lived on the indies. He made a surprise appearance in TNA in 2003 as the officiator for the Clockwork Orange House of Fun match. I know what you're saying. What's a Clockwork Orange House of Fun match? It's one of these gimmicks that TNA created where there's poles and they have chains hanging from them, and each chain has weapons.
Nice.
It was a Ravens rule match. It was kind of fun. Kind of like the Monsters Ball, except the superstars didn't have to be locked away for 24 hours with no food and no water. He then would show up to Big Time Wrestling, All World Wrestling. He appeared as one of the subjects in the film Card Subject to Change. And he continued just independent wrestling. He made a surprise appearance at Extreme Reunion during the Shane Douglas Too Cool Scorpio match. And he continued wrestling into 2013, 2014, and he went until 2020, and he became manager in 2021. In this time period, he showed up at Ring of Honor in 2016. It was a match between Steve Corino and BJ Whitmer, and Sullivan ended up striking Steve Corino with a golden spike. He formed an alliance with BJ Whitmer and none other than Punishment Damian Martinez, who would go on to be WWE's own Damian Priest.
Was that?
He called BJ Whitmer his...
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say Damian Priest, and it ends up that it is Damian Priest.
Yeah. Whitmer was billed as his second son, and he terrorized Steve Corino his first son for not letting his evil side out. I just find it interesting that Damian Priest is kind of like the number 2 guy in 2 evil stables, this and Judgment Day. He got recruited by Kevin Sullivan and Edge. It's pretty good.
Okay.
This feud kind of came to a halt though because Steve Corino ended up signing with the WWE. And from there on, he made his convention appearances. I met him at the Squared Circle Expo. The first year I went, he added me into his Army of Darkness. Great guy to talk to. I always love his shoot interviews as well. And unfortunately, in May of 2024, he was involved in a devastating accident. And from there, he passed away August 9th at the age of 75. He got a men's wrestling award in 2022 for the Cauliflower Alley Club. He was the NWA Florida Heavyweight Champion one time. He won the NWA Florida Tag Titles with Haystacks Calhoun one time. Of course, that ECW Tag Team Champion. He won the Georgia Tag Team Championship with Tony Atlas. He was inducted into the NWA Hall of Fame in 2014. And he was ranked number 58 out of the top 500 singles wrestlers in the PWI 500 in 94. And he was ranked 106 in the top 500 singles wrestlers of the PWI years in 2023. That, along with his WCW Tag Team Championship with Cactus Jack, caps off Kevin Sullivan's amazing career. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, he feuded with Hogan, Flair, Dusty. He had matches with Bruiser Brody and Billy Graham. He teamed with Haystacks Calhoun, Cactus Jack. He was at ECW when it first started. He got to mix it up with the Horsemen and the NWO as the Horsemen and the prelude to the NWO, Hogan and Savage, and them trying to find the darkness. Kevin Sullivan was kind of everywhere, and it's another one of those where WWE will mention him, but you don't realize the impact he had. The outpouring of superstars on X, it baffled me, and it's one of those things. I knew he was an important figure, but it didn't click how important he was until MJF's tweet, where he said, "If you're a real professional wrestler, you study the original Devil." Coming from the current Devil himself. Not too bad.
I think you're leaving out his most important career accomplishment, though.
What's that?
He made an appearance on Judge Steve Harvey, the TV show.
Yep. I have seen that. Him and J.J. Dillon, right?
Yep, J.J. Dillon. They appeared on Judge Steve Harvey.
I met them both.
Their case was that Dillon was suing Kevin Sullivan for not being paid back a $7,500 loan to help Sullivan buy a $15,000 boat 5 years ago. Judge Steve Harvey did, execute the rule of law and order, ruled in favor of J.J. Dillon. But he was so nice, and he loved both of their works for so long. So, Steve Harvey, major pro wrestling fan.
Okay.
He decided he would pay the $7,500 on behalf of Sullivan, because I guess Sullivan's a fucking little bitch. And and also so that JJ and Kevin can maintain their friendship and not let this measly amount of money separate them.
Yeah. I mean, see, he was everywhere.
Yeah.
And now I think the thing we're waiting on, and I feel like whenever we do these, it seems like this gets brought up probably half the time now. With everything I said, you'd think he'd be in the WWE Hall of Fame. Yeah. But unfortunately, it's rumored that this is a tough induction because of how it's kind of like China, where Triple H didn't want people Googling China and seeing what came up there. It's rumored that Triple H doesn't want people Googling Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit getting brought up.
Which sucks.
If that's what's keeping him out, that's terrible.
Yeah. Because the thing with China, that's different. Because that's something she did on her own free will, right. I guess. The fact that Sullivan is being
blacklisted, really,
for a conspiracy theory that it has no real basis in reality.
Yeah, and the ironic part of it all is you figure, I mean, yeah, Benoit was doing stuff in ECW in Japan, but Kevin Sullivan booking him the way he did, booking his divorce, really gave Benoit his first big storyline, which snowballed into his career. So in a way, Kevin Sullivan booked his inability to be in the WWE Hall of Fame too. Little did he know.
Yeah.
But I hope something comes out of it. Like I said, he gets a lot of flack for his booking in WCW at the end, but I don't think there's anything he could save. He was a good wrestler. He got to mix it up with the who's who, and it's only a matter of time before he goes in the WWE Hall of Fame, I hope.
Yeah, he should definitely be.
And it better not be in the Legacy Wing.
Good thing, I think the Legacy Wing is dead, I think. So.
But yeah, like I said, it's a shame that with the career that this man had, that a lot of people just know him as the Chris Benoit guy. And I'm hoping that as more individuals come out and pay their respects to Kevin Sullivan, that people realize the impact that his Prince of Darkness character truly had. But if you want to hear more about either wrestlers that don't get the respect they deserve, or some that had some untimely passing, so we did another tribute, make sure you head on over to our YouTube page, where they are a nice little playlist for you. The first one, of course, is the Profiles playlist, PW Profiles. As of recording, 21 videos in that right now. And then in another, is PWP Superstar Tributes, which that one has videos even dating back before this incarnation of the podcast. And if you're interested in anything else of ours, make sure you use the link in the comments that has our link tree, and then you'll be able to find our Spotify, all of our socials, our Etsy store, and anything else PWP related.